Observe the masses, and you will see a recurring tragedy. Most men react to disrespect like wounded animals. They bark, they shout, they wave their arms, and in doing so, they prove exactly what their enemies suspect, that they can be controlled. When you lose your temper, you surrender your sovereignty. You become a predictable machine, a puppet whose strings are pulled by anyone with a loud enough voice or a sharp enough tongue. You are being treated as an afterthought, a minor character in your own life, because you have not yet mastered the art of the calculated coldness. You have been taught that to stand up for yourself means to make noise. You have been lied to. In the architecture of power, the loudest sound is often the one that never comes. Today, we strip away your desperation for validation. We are going to dismantle the fragile ego that demands an immediate response and replace it with something far more lethal. By the end of this transmission, you will understand how Thomas Shelby turns a room of shouting enemies into a room of trembling subordinates without uttering a single syllable. You will learn to move through the social chessboard not as a piece, but as the hand that moves it. You will become a ghost in their heads, untouchable, unpredictable, and devastatingly lethal. What Tommy Shelby executes in the smoky, blood-stained pubs of Birmingham, Niccolò Machiavelli codified in the high courts of Italy centuries ago. They both understood one fundamental truth of human nature. It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose. And silence is the ultimate instrument of fear. If you are ready to stop begging for respect and start commanding it with the weight of your presence alone, like this video now to signal your entry into the circle. Comment Shelby Sovereignty. Below, if you have chosen the path of power over the path of the herd. The architecture of power begins with the law of strategic stillness. In a world that cannot stop talking, the man who chooses silence becomes a vacuum. And human nature abhors a vacuum. People will literally destroy their own social standing just to fill the emptiness you create. When you are disrespected, your instinct is to defend. You feel the heat in your chest, the urge to justify your worth, or the need to strike back with an insult of your own. This is the mark of the common man. He is reactive. He is a slave to the stimulus provided by his aggressor. The man of power, however, knows that to defend is to acknowledge that the attack had merit. To explain is to submit. Instead, you must observe. You must become the cold, unmoving center of the storm. Think back to the moment Thomas Shelby first encountered Billy Kimber. Kimber enters the garrison with the roar of a man who believes his voice is his power. He is surrounded by muscle, shouting demands, spitting insults, and throwing his weight around like a blunt instrument. He is trying to provoke a reaction, to find the cracks in Tommy's armor. And what does Tommy do? He does absolutely nothing. He sits at the table, perfectly still. He does not rise to meet the threat. He does not stammer a greeting. He barely blinks. His eyes are fixed on Kimber, not with anger, but with the detached curiosity of a scientist examining a specimen that is already dead. Tommy lets Kimber's noise define Kimber's weakness. Every shout from Kimber is a piece of data. Every insult reveals an insecurity. By remaining a black hole of silence, Tommy forces Kimber to keep talking, to keep posturing, until Kimber eventually looks foolish, even to his own men. The vacuum of Tommy's silence has sucked the oxygen out of Kimber's ego. This is the fox's mask that Machiavelli spoke of in the 16th century. He taught that a prince must be a fox to recognize the traps laid by his enemies. When someone disrespects you, they are laying a trap. They want you to get angry because an angry man is an irrational man. They want you to defend yourself because a man who defends himself is a man who is beneath them. Your silence is the mask that renders their trap useless. It makes the aggressor reveal their hand, while you remain an enigma, a puzzle they cannot solve. Machiavelli understood that the perception of power is often more important than power itself. If your enemy cannot read you, they cannot defeat you. If they cannot provoke you, they cannot control you. Compare this to the common man, the one who populates the offices, the bars, and the social media feeds of the world. When he is interrupted, he tries to talk over the other person, his voice rising in a desperate, shaky pitch. When he is insulted, he stammers an excuse or hurls a predictable profanity back. He thinks he is being tough, but he is actually broadcasting his vulnerability. He is showing the world exactly where he is hurt. He is proving that he can be moved. The man of power realizes that the only way to win a game played by fools is to refuse to play. He recognizes that his energy is a sovereign resource, and he refuses to spend it on someone who has not earned it. He understands that by not reacting, he is signaling that the other person's words are so insignificant that they didn't even register on his radar. The practical application of this in your modern social chessboard is visceral and immediate. It requires a level of emotional discipline that most men will never possess. The next time someone interrupts you in a meeting, or attempts to belittle you in front of a group, or hurls a personal slight your way, do not flinch. Stop moving. Look them directly in one eye. Not both, just one, as it creates a more piercing, predatory focus. Count to 3 slowly in your head, while maintaining that gaze. Do not scowl. Do not smile. Keep your face as expressionless as a slab of granite. After the 3 seconds have passed, simply continue your previous action or turn to someone else and ask a completely unrelated question. You have just rendered their words invisible. You have treated their disrespect not as a challenge, but as a minor, irrelevant noise, like a fly buzzing in a distant room. The psychological weight of this on the aggressor is devastating. They expected a fight. You gave them a void. They expected to be the center of attention. You made them a ghost. In that silence, they will begin to feel an intense, strategic vulnerability. They will wonder what you are thinking. They will wonder if they have gone too far. They will begin to fear the consequence that your silence implies. This is how you reclaim your sovereignty. You do not demand respect through volume. You command it through the terrifying weight of your stillness. You are the one who decides what is worthy of a response. If they are beneath you, they receive nothing. No words, no anger. Just the cold, hard reality of your indifference. This is the first step in destroying the disrespectful without saying a word. Realize that your silence is not a lack of action, but the most aggressive action you can take. It is the foundation of the Shelby reign. The second weapon in your arsenal of absolute sovereignty is the dismantling gaze. In the architecture of human interaction, the eyes are not merely windows to the soul. They are the primary instruments of psychological warfare. Most men use their eyes to seek permission. They dart their gaze around the room, looking for approval, checking for threats, or quickly glancing away when they meet a more dominant presence. This is the behavior of the prey. The man of power, however, understands that his gaze is a mirror, a cold, reflective surface that does not project his own fear, but instead reflects the enemy's insecurity back at them until it becomes unbearable. To master the dismantling gaze is to understand that the first person to look away has already lost the battle. You are not looking at them to communicate. You are looking through them to demonstrate that their attempt at disrespect has failed to find a target. Consider the calculated precision of Thomas Shelby when he is confronted by those who intend to do him harm, specifically during his dealings with the Italian assassins sent by Sabini. There is a moment when the air in the room thickens with the threat of immediate violence. A common man in this position would have eyes wide with panic, pupils dilated, scanning for an exit or a weapon. Not Tommy. His eyes are like shards of ice, fixed, unmoving, and terrifyingly calm. When he looks at an assassin, he isn't seeing a man who might kill him. He is seeing a problem he has already solved in his mind. He doesn't scream, he doesn't posture, and he certainly doesn't look away to break the tension. He holds the gaze with a predatory stillness that suggests he has already decided exactly how his enemy's story ends. This gaze strips the aggressor of their bravado. When you look at someone with that level of detached intensity, you are signaling that you are the apex predator in the environment. You are essentially telling them, without saying a single word, that their life is a variable you control. This is the living embodiment of the Machiavellian principle that men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. Niccolò Machiavelli understood that the masses, and even the elite, are governed by perception. He wrote that everyone sees what you appear to be, but few feel what you are. If your gaze never wavers, if it remains a constant, unwavering force of nature, the perception of your power becomes an objective reality in the minds of those around you. When someone disrespects you, they are attempting to alter the perception of your status. They want to see you flinch. They want to see that tiny, involuntary movement of the eyes that signals a break in your confidence. By refusing to give them that movement, you maintain the perception of sovereignty. You are asserting that your internal reality is stronger than their external provocation. You are the rock upon which their waves of disrespect break and dissolve. In the social chessboard, the eyes are the king. If the king does not flee, the kingdom stands. The common man fails this test every single day. When he walks into a high-stakes environment or faces a social aggressor, his eyes are noisy. They move too much. They look down at the floor, a submissive gesture that dates back to our most primitive ancestors. Or he stares with an artificial, forced aggression, a tough guy act that smells of desperation and insecurity. People can sense the difference between a man who is trying to look dangerous and a man who simply is dangerous. The former is a performer, the latter is a sovereign. The common man's gaze is a reaction to the environment, whereas the man of power's gaze is the environment. If you want to destroy a disrespectful person, you must first dismantle their belief that they can affect your internal state. You do this by making your eyes a dead end for their aggression. To apply this in your modern reality, you must master the predator's pause. When someone says something intended to undermine you, or when they attempt to use their status to diminish yours, do not respond with a clever comeback. Do not defend your position. Instead, stop everything you are doing. If you were reaching for a glass, stop your hand. If you were walking, stop your stride. Turn your head slowly and lock your gaze onto one of their eyes. Not the bridge of the nose, not the forehead. Pick one eye and tunnel into it. Count to 5 in your head. During these 5 seconds, do not blink more than once. Maintain a face of absolute terrifying neutrality. You are looking at them as if they are a confusing piece of modern art that you find slightly boring. What happens in those 5 seconds is a complete collapse of the aggressor's psychological framework. The silence combined with the unyielding gaze creates a strategic vulnerability. They will feel an overwhelming urge to speak, to laugh it off, or to look away. When they eventually break eye contact, and they will, you have won. You have effectively castrated their social power without uttering a syllable. You have demonstrated that while they were trying to play a game of insults, you were operating on a level of existence they cannot even fathom. You have turned their disrespect into a mirror that shows them exactly how small they really are. This is the dismantling gaze, the art of winning the war before the first shot is even fired. The third pillar in your architecture of dominance is the strategy of calculated withdrawal. In the desperate, noisy world of the mediocre, people believe that presence is power. They think that by staying in the room, by arguing their point, or by demanding to be heard, they are asserting their importance. They are wrong. True power is not found in how loud you are when you are present. It is found in the deafening vacuum you leave behind when you depart. If you are in a situation where your value is not being recognized, or where disrespect is being tolerated, your greatest weapon is not a confrontation. It is your absence. By withdrawing, you force the disrespectful party to confront the reality of their own insignificance without you. You are teaching them that your presence is a privilege, and like all privileges, it can be revoked instantly and without explanation. Observe how Thomas Shelby handles the representatives of the IRA in the garrison. These are men who come to him with threats, with the weight of an organization behind them, expecting Tommy to negotiate, to plead, or to show fear. They want a dialogue because a dialogue implies equality. Tommy, however, understands the hierarchy of the soul. He doesn't sit there and debate the merits of their cause or the validity of their threats. Instead, he treats the entire interaction with a chilling level of indifference. He pours himself a drink, he focuses on his own thoughts, and then, at the height of their posturing, he simply turns his back. He walks away. He doesn't ask for permission to end the conversation. He doesn't give them the satisfaction of a goodbye or a "we're finished here." He simply ceases to be part of their reality. By withdrawing his attention, he renders their threats impotent. He dictates the tempo and the conclusion of the interaction, leaving them standing in a room that suddenly feels very empty and very small. This is the tactical application of Machiavelli's observation that a prince must avoid being hated, but being ignored is a death sentence for one's influence. Machiavelli knew that the moment you stop engaging with an enemy on their terms, you have gained the upper hand. When you withdraw your presence from a disrespectful environment, you are acting as your own foundation. You are demonstrating that you do not need the validation of the room to exist. Machiavelli argued that a ruler who depends on the goodwill of others is always at risk, but the one who depends on his own strength is secure. By walking away from disrespect, you are signaling that your self-worth is entirely self-contained. You are the sun, and if they choose to be disrespectful, they simply lose the light. You don't need to burn them. You just need to leave them in the dark. The common man is terrified of withdrawal. He has a pathological need to be liked, to be included, and to win the argument. If he feels disrespected, he stays in the toxic environment, trying to prove his worth, trying to explain why he deserves better treatment. He stays at the job that belittles him. He stays in the relationship that mocks him. He stays at the table where he is an afterthought. He thinks that by staying and fighting, he is showing strength. In reality, he is showing that he is an addict, addicted to the very people who despise him. The man of power, however, knows that his time and energy are the most valuable currencies in the world. He does not spend them where the return on investment is zero. He wins by ending the game entirely and taking his pieces to a different board. In the modern Zadrez social, you must learn the art of the phantom departure. If you are in a social setting, a professional meeting, or a digital space where the boundaries of respect are crossed, do not make a scene. Do not announce your grievance. Announcement is a form of negotiation, and you are not there to negotiate your worth. Simply stop contributing. Become a ghost. Then, at the first possible moment, leave. Do not say, "I'm leaving because you were rude." Do not send a long text explaining your feelings. Just go. Delete the thread, walk out of the room, or cancel the next meeting without a detailed excuse. The silence you leave in your wake is more haunting than any insult. The disrespectful person, who expected a reaction, is left with a crushing sense of uncertainty. They begin to analyze their own behavior. They wonder if they went too far. They wonder if they have lost access to you permanently. By withdrawing, you have shifted the burden of anxiety from your shoulders to theirs. You have moved from a position of defending your honor to a position of withholding your value. This is the cold reality of power. People only truly value what can be taken away from them. If you never leave, your presence becomes cheap. If you are willing to walk away in total silence, your presence becomes a sovereign gold. You destroy their disrespect by making them realize that without you, they are irrelevant. The fourth pillar of your ascending sovereignty is the mastery of emotional sovereignty, more commonly known in the underworld of the mind as the zero reaction. In the grand theater of social chess, your emotions are not expressions of your humanity. They are the vulnerabilities in your armor. To react is to signal to the world that you are a puppet, and that the person disrespecting you has found the string. When you flinch, when you redden with anger, or when you stammer in a defensive rage, you are handing your enemy the remote control to your nervous system. The sovereign man, however, understands that indifference is a weapon of mass destruction. By remaining emotionally unreachable, you become the puppeteer. You transform their attempt at a psychological strike into a mirror of their own futility. You do not just survive the insult, you make the very act of insulting you seem like a pathetic, childish endeavor. To witness this level of cold, calculated control, one must look at the psychological warfare between Thomas Shelby and Father John Hughes. The priest is a man who hides a monstrous nature behind a veil of religious and social authority. He is a master of the slight, the subtle, cutting insult designed to remind Tommy of his place in the social hierarchy. During their confrontations, Hughes hurls the most toxic arrows a man can face. He insults Tommy's family, he spits on his gypsy heritage, and he attempts to belittle the very foundation of Tommy's soul. A common man would have been driven to a physical or verbal explosion. The common man would have allowed the heat of the moment to dictate his actions. But look at Thomas Shelby's face in those moments. It is a mask of ancient stone. His breathing does not accelerate. His eyes do not narrow in anger. They remain wide, vacant, and terrifyingly observant. He treats the priest's vitriol as if it were nothing more than a change in the weather. Unpleasant, perhaps, but ultimately irrelevant to the mission. Tommy understands that the priest is fishing for a reaction to gain leverage. By giving him nothing, not a frown, not a retort, not even a change in posture, Tommy effectively starves the priest's ego. He makes the man of God look like a man of noise. This is the manifestation of the Machiavellian mandate that a prince must have no other object or thought, nor any other subject for his study, but war and its discipline. In the 16th century courts and on the modern social battlefield, the war is often internal before it is external. Machiavelli understood that the greatest liability a leader carries is his own emotional volatility. If a prince can be baited, he can be conquered. If he can be made angry, he can be made to make a mistake. Emotional sovereignty is the discipline of the fortress. When you refuse to react to disrespect, you are proving that your fortress is impenetrable. You are signaling that the aggressor's weapons are too weak to even scratch the surface of your reality. In The Prince, Machiavelli suggests that a ruler should be viewed as a man of great character and strength. Nothing projects that strength more than the ability to remain unmoved while others are losing their composure. Contrast this with the common man, the man you see every day in offices, in gyms, and in online comment sections. He is triggered by the slightest provocation. He believes that standing up for himself means shouting back or writing a long emotional paragraph to defend his honor. He thinks that by reacting, he is showing strength, but he is actually broadcasting his extreme fragility. He is showing that his self-esteem is so precarious that it can be knocked over by a single word from a stranger or a rival. The common man is a slave to the stimulus-response cycle. He is predictable, and because he is predictable, he is easily manipulated and eventually discarded. The man of power looks at an insult and sees a data point. He asks himself, "Why is this person trying to provoke me? What is their objective?" He analyzes the strike without ever feeling the pain. The practical application of the zero reaction in your daily life is the technique of the cold smile. When someone attempts to undermine you, or when they hurl a direct insult in a social setting, do not let your heart rate rise. Instead, observe the physical sensations in your body and consciously relax your shoulders. Then, offer a very slight, almost imperceptible smirk. This is not a smile of joy. It is the smile a scientist gives to a lab rat that is behaving in a predictable, slightly amusing way. It is the look you give a child who is trying to be tough. It signals that you are not only unhurt by their words, but that you find their attempt at disrespect to be beneath your notice. It effectively flips the power dynamic. Suddenly, they are the ones performing for your amusement. You haven't said a word, yet you have labeled them as insignificant. Practice this emotional sovereignty in low-stakes situations, with a rude cashier or an annoying acquaintance, until it becomes your default setting. When you master the art of the zero reaction, you become truly untouchable. You become the sovereign of your own mind, and in doing so, you become the master of every room you enter. The fifth law in your architecture of silence is the power of slow motion. In the frantic, high-anxiety pulse of modern society, speed is almost always a symptom of panic. The man who moves quickly, who speaks rapidly, and who fidgets with nervous energy is a man who is telegraphing to everyone around him that he is not in control of the situation, or himself. Speed is the language of the servant. Slowness is the dialect of the king. To dominate a disrespectful person without saying a word, you must master the physics of your own presence. You must learn that by slowing down your physical and verbal tempo, you are asserting your ownership over the very space and time that the other person is trying to occupy. You are signaling that your reality moves at your pace, and if they want to interact with you, they must adjust to your rhythm. Observe the way Thomas Shelby enters a room. He never rushes, even when his life or his empire is under immediate threat. Whether he is walking through the mud of Birmingham or the polished marble halls of Parliament, his movements are deliberate, heavy, and rhythmic. Watch him when he is confronted by a threat like Billy Kimber or the police inspector Campbell. He doesn't startle. He doesn't move his hands in quick, jerky motions to defend himself. He occupies space with a terrifying gravity. When he sits down, he does it slowly. When he reaches for a cigarette, it is a choreographed movement of absolute intent. This slow motion creates an aura of inevitable doom for his enemies. It suggests that Tommy is so confident in his ultimate victory that he has all the time in the world. It forces everyone else in the room to hold their breath, waiting for his next move. His slowness is a form of psychological suffocation. It draws all the attention to him and makes the frantic energy of his detractors look like the buzzing of insects. This reflects the Machiavellian insight that sudden changes and hurried actions are the hallmarks of a weak and unstable state. Machiavelli suggested that a prince should project an image of consistency and measured action to ensure that his subjects and his enemies perceive him as an unstoppable force. In the social arena, consistency is expressed through the control of your physical tempo. If you are hurried, you are vulnerable. If you are measured, you are formidable. Machiavelli understood that the perception of stability is what prevents rebellion. By moving and speaking slowly, you are projecting an internal stability that discourages disrespect. You are making it clear that you are the one who dictates the tempo of the state, and anyone who tries to disrupt it will find themselves crashing against a wall of calm. The common man is a creature of noisy movement. When he is nervous, he talks faster, his voice rising in pitch as he tries to fill the silence. He fidgets with his phone, his keys, or his clothes. He walks with a hurried, apologetic gait, as if he is sorry for taking up space. When he is disrespected, his movements become even more erratic. He might move closer to the aggressor in a fake show of toughness, but the speed of his movements betrays his fear. He is trying to win through activity, but he is actually losing through a lack of composure. The common man is like a bird, skittish, fast, and easily frightened. The man of power is like a mountain, immovable, silent, and indifferent to the wind. To implement the power of slow motion in your personal Zadrez social, you must begin with a 10% reduction. Starting today, consciously lower the tempo of your speech, your walking, and your hand movements by exactly 10%. When you are asked a question, especially a challenging one, do not answer immediately. Wait 2 seconds, then answer with a lower, more deliberate tone. If you are walking into a room where you know people may be hostile or disrespectful, slow your pace. Do not look like you are rushing to get it over with. Look like you are arriving to inspect your property. If someone hurls a disrespectful comment at you, do not jump to respond. Move your head toward them with the agonizing slowness of a predator that has just spotted its prey. This deceleration does something profound to the human brain. It triggers a deep-seated primal fear in the observer. We are evolutionarily programmed to be wary of things that move slowly and deliberately in high-stakes environments. It suggests a level of power and lack of fear that is unnatural. By adopting this tempo, you are telling the disrespectful person that their existence does not warrant a change in your pace. You are showing them that you are not threatened by them in the slightest. You are the one who controls the clock. When you master the power of slow motion, you don't just occupy the room, you own the time within it. You destroy their disrespect by showing them that you are the only one who is truly at peace. The sixth and most lethal instrument in your psychological armory is the principle of the invisible execution. In the realm of the common man, conflict is a theatrical production. When someone is wronged or disrespected, they feel a desperate, almost pathological need to announce their intentions. They threaten, they warn, they posture, and they promise what they will do next. In doing so, they provide their enemy with the most valuable asset in any war: time. They allow the aggressor to prepare, to counterattack, or to hide. The sovereign man, however, understands that the most effective strike is the one that is never seen coming. He does not warn, he simply executes. He lets the consequences of his enemy's disrespect arrive long before any words are spoken. To master this is to understand that power is not found in the threat of action, but in the finality of the result. Observe the masterful, cold-blooded precision with which Thomas Shelby handles the ultimate betrayal from his longtime rival and occasional ally, Alfie Solomons. Alfie is a man of immense psychological weight, a man who understands the game as well as Tommy does. When Alfie betrays the Shelby family, he expects a confrontation. He expects a negotiation or a theatrical outburst of rage. But look at how Tommy approaches the end of Alfie Solomons on that desolate beach at Margate. There is no screaming match. There is no long list of grievances. Tommy doesn't spend weeks sending threats or making noise in the underworld. He simply waits until the time is right, locates his target, and arrives with the silence of a shadow. Even as they speak, Tommy's intent is already a settled fact. He has already removed the pieces from the board in his mind. The execution is invisible because it began the moment the disrespect occurred, and by the time Alfie sees the gun, the war is already over. Tommy's internal psychology in this moment is one of total, detached finality. He has moved beyond anger into the realm of pure, tactical necessity. He treats the removal of a traitor not as a personal vendetta, but as a necessary correction in the architecture of his empire. This is the raw, uncompromising application of the Machiavellian doctrine. If an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that his vengeance need not be feared. Niccolò Machiavelli understood that half measures are the seeds of your own destruction. If you warn someone, you give them a chance to strike back. If you threaten someone, you make them your permanent enemy, while they are still capable of hurting you. Machiavelli taught that a prince must strike with such decisive and silent force that the victim is rendered incapable of retaliation. In the social and political courts of the 16th century, this meant total ruin or death. In your modern world, it means the total and silent removal of your value from their lives. Machiavelli knew that the most respected and feared leaders were those who did not bark, but whose bite was absolute and unexpected. When you execute silently, you are following the blueprint of the fox and the lion. You are utilizing the fox's cunning to hide your intent and the lion's strength to finish the matter permanently. The common man is a creature of empty threats. He says things like, "If you do that one more time, I'm leaving," or "You're going to regret this." He uses his voice to compensate for his lack of action. Because he is afraid of the silence of a real ending, he uses noise to keep the connection alive, even a toxic one. He wants the other person to know they've hurt him. The common man's ego demands that the aggressor acknowledges the pain. The man of power has no such need. He doesn't care if the aggressor understands his pain. He only cares that the aggressor loses their access to his world. The common man makes himself predictable and vulnerable through his warnings. The man of power remains a terrifying mystery because no one ever knows where the boundary is until they have already crossed it and found themselves outside the gate, permanently locked out. The practical application of the invisible execution in your modern Zadrez social requires a level of ruthlessness that will separate you from the herd forever. If a business partner, a friend, or a romantic interest crosses the line of respect, do not offer a final warning. Warnings are for children. Instead, take immediate, silent action. If it is a business betrayal, move your assets, contact your legal counsel, and terminate the contract before they even know you've discovered their deceit. If it is a personal slight that violates your core sovereignty, simply stop all communication. No closure talk. No, we need to talk about what happened text. You simply cease to exist in their reality. Block the number, remove the access, and continue your life as if they never existed. When they eventually realize what has happened, they will scramble to find out why. They will look for a reason, a fight, or an explanation. Give them nothing. Let the silence of your execution be their only answer. This creates a psychological trauma in the mind of the disrespectful person that no argument could ever achieve. They are left haunted by the void where you used to be. They will realize, too late, that you were not a man to be trifled with. You have destroyed their influence over you by making your presence a privilege that was silently revoked the moment they failed to respect it. This is how you win. You don't fight the disrespectful. You simply remove the board they were playing on. The architecture of your new life is now complete. You have traveled through the smoke of Birmingham and the cold marble halls of the Italian courts to reach a singular truth. Power is not a gift that the world bestows upon you. It is a tax you collect through the sheer weight of your presence and the discipline of your silence. Respect is the currency of the sovereign, and you have learned how to ensure its flow is never interrupted. Thomas Shelby and Niccolò Machiavelli, separated by centuries but united by the same cold understanding of the human soul, both knew that the loudest man in the room is the one with the most to lose. The man who shouts is the man who is begging for attention. The man who stays silent is the man who already owns the room. Power is the shadow you cast when you refuse to play the victim, and it is the silence that follows when you refuse to justify your existence to those beneath you. We have dismantled the reactive, fragile ego of the common man and replaced it with a calculated, strategic coldness. You now know that silence is a vacuum that swallows the weak, that your gaze is a mirror of their insecurity, and that your absence is a more powerful statement than your presence could ever be. You have learned to remain emotionally unreachable, to move with the gravity of a mountain, and to execute your decisions with the invisibility of a shadow. This is not just a collection of tips. This is a transformation of your very essence. You are no longer part of the masses who react to the world. You are the architect who shapes it. The social chessboard is no longer a place of confusion. It is a map of your inevitable expansion. Now, the transmission ends and the application begins. I am issuing you a final challenge, a 24-hour protocol of silent sovereignty. For the next day, you will operate as a ghost in the machine. No matter what provocation you face, no matter who attempts to undermine your status or interrupt your peace, you will not react with words. You will not defend, you will not explain, and you will not shout. You will use only your eyes, your measured movements, and the terrifying weight of your stillness. If someone is disrespectful, give them the predator's pause and then walk away. If you are challenged, use the cold smile and remain silent. Do this for 24 hours and observe how the world bends to your new rhythm. Observe the fear and the sudden, desperate respect that enters the voices of those who previously thought they could handle you. You will feel the shift in the atmosphere the moment you step into a room. The throne of your own life is waiting, dusty from years of neglect, but ready for the sovereign to return. Come back to this transmission tomorrow and report your results in the comments. Tell me how the power dynamic shifted when you stopped talking and started dominating. The era of your submissiveness is dead. The era of your reign has begun. Will you take the seat that is rightfully yours, or will you fade back into the noise of the mediocre? The choice, as always, is yours. But remember, the Peaky Blinders don't beg. Neither do kings.